It's time now for the news review of this bulletin. Iran's foreign minister is in Iraq for an official visit aimed at building up bilateral ties and developing regional cooperation. In a meeting with his Iraqi counterpart in Baghdad, Hossein Amir-Abdollahian described as unacceptable the presence of some terrorist and separatist groups in Iraq. The top Iranian diplomat warned that Iraq must not turn into a stage for terrorist attacks against Iran. Amir-Abdollahian said the Islamic Republic supports an independent Iraq, expressing hope that Iraqi Parliament's resolution on expelling foreign troops would be fully implemented. Foreign Minister Fuad Hossein, for his part, said the Iraqi constitution does not allow the country to be used as a base to launch threats against its neighbors, including Iran. Fuad Hossein also said Baghdad is determined to put on trial those behind the 2020 assassination of Iran's top commander, General Qasem Soleimani, and his Iraqi companion, Abu Mahdi al-Mohandes. Elijah Magnier, journalist and political analyst from Brussels, joins us. We also have Masoud Shajari, political commentator, who joins us from London. Welcome to you both. Elijah Magnier, first over to you. This is a very important visit, though the news is not as widespread, and that's somewhat understood. When we're taking a look at some of the points covered there, one of the most important ones, if you agree, is for Iraq not to be used as a launch pad in terms of launching attacks against other countries. Of course, we know what Iran's foreign minister is referring to. Will Iraq be able to stand up to the U.S. on this point?
Thank you for having me. I think it is difficult for the Iraqi government to hold on to its promises because the Iraqis, central government in Baghdad, control the border between Iran and Iraq, but not the part that is related to Kurdistan. And the Kurdistan border, it's an area controlled by the Kurds mainly, and also the friend of the US. This is where most of the attacks come into Iran, because there are organizations that are trained by the Mossad, that are trained by the US, financed by the US, and their role is to cross to Kurdistan, Iran, and create havoc in the northwest of Iran. This is not something that the Iraqi and the central government can control, because not everything that is decided in Baghdad is put in practice. And for that, we call upon the parliament decision to expel all the US forces from the country, but then Baghdad is not capable of implementing it. Therefore, the changing of the ruling system in Iran is not going to be taken off the table by the US and by the Israelis. This is why it is difficult for the Iraqi to stand to their promises.
Do you agree with that, Masoud Shajari, in terms of Iraqis not being able to, even if they want to, hold on to any commitment they give to Iran when it comes to actions by the U.S., which are against Iran, including, obviously, Israel at the same time?
Yes, I do agree for the fact that they are not fully in charge. And indeed, there has been sort of different governments in Iraq, some of them more sort of committed to creating an independent Iraq, which is controlled by the Iraqis, and others who have been less sort of committed to that task. And they've been more concerned about firefighting, trying to keep Iraq afloat. So yes, to some extent it's true, but I think we need to sort of remove the pressure from Iraq in some ways. We need to look at why is it that so-called international community and the US hegemony, its policy for the whole region is either control countries as a satellite state, like they do in Bahrain and elsewhere, or to create havoc and destroy the harmony of the society, like what they did in Iraq, in Syria, and in Libya. And this two situation both serves the purpose of the hegemony of United States, because then they could actually infiltrate and use the geographical integrity of those countries to implement and promote havoc and disharmony, not just in those countries, but also on places like Iran, in Lebanon, etc., etc. So I think what we need to do is, yes, we need to help Iraq to be able to be fully independent and stop this sort of behavior which it goes against its own interest. But at the same time, we need to actually stop this illusion that have been created that there is an international community under leadership of United States with Europeans playing fiddle and following it, and it's creating havoc, it's creating disharmony, it's creating such an environment of death and destruction for the whole region. And I think that needs to be exposed a lot more than it's exposed currently in the international arena.
So when you Elijah Magnier, say that Iraq may not be able to fulfill its promise, what would be the consequences when there would be, based on U.S. directives or U.S. action, along with Israeli action perhaps, actions to be taken against Iran? Doesn't Iraq realize that then it will become what it doesn't want to be, and that is for it to be a battleground that would involve its soil perhaps, when it does give away some of its sovereignty away to actions, again, as directed or with the active participation by the U.S. and Israel?
Indeed, what weakened the central government in Baghdad was initially President Donald Trump by assassinating the Iranian General Qasem Soleimani and the vice head of the Hashd-e-Shaabi, Abu Mahdi Mohandes, by saying to the Iraqi, if you kick me out of the country, I'm going to hold on to all the assets that you have from selling the Iraqi oil. That is 90% of the Iraqi revenue. It means the US is bullying the Iraqi and imposing their will on Iraq. Furthermore, the Iraqi central government are aware that in 2014, the first two Iranian planes landed in Kurdistan in Erbil to support the Kurds against ISIS. And this was acknowledged by Masoud Barzani himself. This is why we understand that the Iraqi Kurds, in general, generally speaking, their leaders acknowledge the support that Iran is forwarding to the Kurds and has supported the Kurds against the Takfiri. However, we also understand that the US maintains very big and large military bases in Kurdistan. They are protected by the Peshmerga. The Peshmerga at a certain time in 2017, 2018, attacked the Iraqi government because the Iraqi government's forces wanted to take control of Kirkuk and the borders between Iran and Kurdistan. Therefore, we understand that the Kurds in Kurdistan, because they have been enjoyed and given a particular status by the US administration before the fall of Saddam Hussein, when the US imposed the sanctions and the line of demarcation line of non-crossing line between Saddam's forces and Kurdistan. This is why they believe they are part of the West more than they are part of Baghdad. We see also their oil is sold to the Israeli and to Turkey without returning to Baghdad. Also, we understand that the Iraqis are not capable to ask the Turkish forces from leaving Kurdistan, which means the Iraqi sovereignty is undermined by the US and by Turkey. Therefore, I don't think they're going to fulfill their promises. This is why the Iranian bombed the Mossad bases in Kurdistan that should not be there in the first place.
Thank you. Well, unfortunately, we're fresh out of time. Elijah Magnier, journalist and political analyst. Masoud Shajra, many thanks, political commentator from London. And with that, we come to an end for this news review. Thanks for tuning in.